January 1st, the most important day in history. In the year 45 BC, Julius Caesar commissioned the creation of a new calendar known as the Julian calendar. This moved Rome and ultimately the Western world away from a lunar-based calendar to one based on the solar year. To sum it up, this calendar attempts to mark the Earth's orbit around the Sun to measure time, which is a little more than 365 days, instead of using the 28-day lunar cycle. This change paved the way for a more standardized way to measure time, and was the calendar used by the Western world for around 1600 years. The Julian calendar was used as the template to form our current calendar, known as the Gregorian calendar. Without the Julian calendar, the basis for which we measure time might have been completely different. This small change's impact on world history is so vast it cannot be calculated. This is one of the many reasons January 1st is the most important day in history. January 2nd, the most important day in history. In the year 2004, the Stardust space probe flew past the comet Wild 2. This mission was one of NASA's many missions to sample the primordial remnants of our solar system. This mission had previously flew past the asteroid Anne Frank in November of 2002. The probe made a close flyby of the comet, capturing particles from the comet's tail in a special aerogel compound. The sample was ultimately returned to Earth on January 15, 2006, after landing in the deserts of Utah. This sample found the amino acid, glycine, a building block for life on Earth, was present in the comet. This mission, among many others, helped increase our understanding of both the early solar system and the origins of life on Earth. January 3rd, the most important day in history. In the year 1521, Pope Leo X issued a papal bull, or decree, that excommunicated the German theologian and Augustinian friar, Martin Luther, from the Roman Catholic Church. This decree was fulfilling a threat by the Pope from the previous year should Luther fail to renounce his writings, the most famous of which are known as the 95 Theses, authored in 1517. This event further solidified the chain of events which would be known as the Protestant Reformation. Later in the year, Luther would be declared a heretic and an enemy of the state by the Holy Roman Emperor Charles V at the conclusion of the Diet of Worms. This is but one in a series of events which would give birth to Protestantism and irrevocably change the course of human history. January 4th, the most important day in history. The Burj Khalifa officially opened in 2010. Since its opening, the Burj Khalifa has held the record for the world's tallest building, 14 years as of 2024. The Burj Khalifa stands at a towering 828 meters, or 2,717 feet tall, containing 163 floors. The exterior of the building contains a mind-boggling 28,000 hand-cut glass panels and houses a public observation deck on the 124th floor. At its peak, the Burj Khalifa has a 200-meter spire that was constructed inside the building and raised into place via hydraulic jack. The Burj Khalifa is an astounding feat of engineering and stands as a beacon to what humans can achieve when we work together. January 4th, the most important day in history, bonus edition. In the year 1649, the Rump Parliament, the name given to the House of Commons, after a purge of all royalists by the new model army of the Long Parliament, passed an ordinance to establish a High Court of Justice. This High Court would put King Charles I on trial for high treason against the English people. Only 68 of 135 commissioners assigned to the High Court of Justice attended the trial. Charles was convicted of treason and beheaded on January 30th, thus bringing an end to the Second English Civil War and the English monarchy. It is estimated that 300,000 people, about 6% of the population, died during this bloody period. However, in 1660, Charles II, the son of Charles I, would be seated as king, and the monarchy would be restored, albeit with greatly reduced authority. This is one of the many reasons why January 4th is the most important day in history. January 5th, the most important day in history. In 1757, King Louis XV of France survived an assassination attempt by Robert-François d'Amiens, a domestic servant. Louis survived the attempt, largely thanks to his thick woolen winter clothing, only suffering a 1-centimeter puncture. The motivation for the attempt has long been debated by historians, with some attributing it to mental illness, and others to sectarian rites surrounding the holy sacraments. Following the attempt, Robert-François Damiens would be extensively tortured and would ultimately become the last person executed via drawing and quartering in France. Damiens' body would be cremated and scattered in the wind, with his family either being forced to change their names or, as in the case with his wife and daughter, banished from France. This is one of the many reasons why January 5th is the most important day in history. January 5th, the most important day in history. In the year 1933, San Francisco's Golden Gate Bridge began construction. First proposed in 1916, the bridge would go on to become one of the most recognizable and photographed locations on the planet. Incorporating an Art Deco design, the bridge would span the Golden Gate, a 1-mile-wide strait on the northern tip of San Francisco. Upon its completion in 1937, it measured a total length of 1.7 miles and was the longest bridge in the world until 1964, reducing a nearly 30-minute ferry ride to mere minutes. The bridge has undergone few changes through the years, the most notable of which was a torsional bracing retrofit to increase stability in 1951 and the replacement of the original concrete deck with a stronger and lighter steel deck panel system in the mid-1980s. The bridge remains as a treasured and iconic American landmark. This is one of the many reasons why January 5th is the most important day in history. January 6th, the most important day in history. In the year 1993, John Burks Dizzy Gillespie died as a result of pancreatic cancer at the age of 75. Born in the small southern town of Cheraw, South Carolina, Gillespie would rise to become one of the most influential musicians to have ever lived as a bandleader, composer, singer, improviser, and, most of all, trumpeter. An early fixture in the bebop jazz scene, Gillespie would also help pioneer the Afro-Cuban jazz movement. This style, as its namesake suggests, brought in the rich cultural influences of many Afro-Latin cultures bordering the Americas. This style would have a profound influence on the wider jazz community and would be felt in genres ranging from rock and roll to pop to salsa music. Gillespie's career and influence are prime examples of the cultural exchange that was prevalent in the Americas, both before and after the Second World War. This is one of the many reasons why January 6th is the most important day in history. January 7th, the most important day in history. In the year 1610, Galileo Galilei was able to resolve 3 of Jupiter's 4 largest moons through his self-made refracting telescope, described by Galileo as 3 fixed stars, totally invisible by their smallness. The objects were in fact the moons Io, Europa, and Ganymede. After several days of observations, Galileo noted that one of the stars had briefly disappeared, only to reappear upon subsequent observations. On January 13th, he would discover a 4th star, now known as the Moon, Callisto. Galileo would correctly surmise that these 4 stars were not stars and instead moons in orbit of Jupiter. These 4 moons have come to be known as the Galilean satellites by astronomers all over the world. This is one of the many reasons why January 7th is the most important day in history.